Well, I'll tell you, we have an exciting segment coming up with Michelle and Jared Brock, world-changing documentary makers. And Brian, when we think about how we want to affect the world, these two have taken their skills, and probably you're somewhat surprised at how God has used your skills, and you are introducing world-changing information that is helping families. And so it really is about sex trafficking. It's about protecting our children. And tell me a little bit about how you got into this. You've been married 8 years, I think. Did you think this is what you'd be doing for your married life?
No, definitely not. So it all kind of started when we actually took our youth group down to Atlanta, Georgia. This was probably 10 years ago now, maybe. And Gary Hagen from International Justice Mission was speaking about modern day slavery. And this is something that we had never heard of before. And I thought, being in my first year of university, I'm like, oh, I know everything there is to know about the world. And I was baffled. I was like, what? Slavery is still happening today? And so afterwards, they were giving out 100 tickets to pre-screen a movie called Trade. And it's a feature-length film about human trafficking. And out of the 10,000 people that were at the conference, we ended up with 6 of those 100 tickets. Wow. And we went and we saw it, and it was truly one of those before and after moments where we walked into the theater one way and we came out completely changed, and that's how it started for us.
Now, it's interesting because with your one word at a time, and I love that, we fight exploitation, hope for not only abolitionist work that you're doing, but also in exploitation with the word, the time, the writing, the speaking, and film, and the work of really just covering all the mediums. And you've been on CBC, CTV, WDCX, and you've been all over. This thing has just gone viral, and it started out of this one thing. But tell us a little bit about the ministry, one word at a time.
Yeah, we basically looked at this huge abolitionist equation of aftercare and policing and politics and raising awareness. We're like, okay, where do we fit in this? And so how it actually happened was we came back from Atlanta and Michelle didn't speak for a couple days. And I just said, we'll do something. We didn't know what. She started raising awareness, and Michelle had gone through university on a scholarship, and she had the opportunity to apply for this $2,000 grant. And 2 days before the deadline, she said, should I apply? I said, yeah, if you get it, we'll make a documentary about human trafficking. So she applied and got it, and then I was like, oh shoot, now we have to make a documentary on human trafficking. And so we literally bought a camera on eBay, and a filmmaker friend taught us how to turn it on our way to our first interview. We drove 11,000 kilometers in 17 days, and that was our first film, and it just kind of gone from there. We have no formal training, but we just felt really called to, fight exploitation one word at a time.
Why did it compel your soul so incredibly to do this?
I mean, I think for me as a woman, it's probably the worst thing that I can imagine happening to me. And as we started meeting people across the country, we realized that this is not just an international issue in faraway countries. It's a home issue as well. And so I think as we kept meeting people, we realized, yep, we need to stick with this.
So you met the girls, and you met people that were, involved on many facets of this and got interviews.
Yeah, we've met we've encountered so many heartbreaking stories. We had coffee one time with a girl who she was recruited in Burlington, Ontario, and she was being trafficked via Facebook and Plenty of Fish ads. Wow. We interviewed a former John who spent over $300,000 on porn and prostitution over 12 years. This is happening in our own country.
When you look at the legalization of prostitution, and even with the Honorable Stephen Harper, when he actually put a loophole and they said, no, but they're going to go after the John. Government has a big part to play in this, not only the practical part that people, but July 2014 was a big time for you. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we got asked to testify in front of the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights on Bill C-36. And so when we were making our documentary, Red Light, Green Light, we went to Sweden and looked at what's known as the Nordic model. And basically what they've done is they've recognized that the women who are selling, primarily women, there are men too who also sell their bodies, but those who are selling their bodies, they're usually in a place of vulnerability, whereas the people buying are usually in a place of power because they're able to pay for this. And so they recognized this and they said, we shouldn't be criminalizing the people who are trying to sell their bodies because they're doing it out of this place of desperation and vulnerability, but we need to keep we need to hold these men who are paying accountable.
Yes.
And so it's an interesting approach. And what's happened in Sweden is, as a result, demand has gone down because these guys don't want to get caught, and so there's a deterrent there. But also, they've created programs for these women who are trying to leave the industry or who aren't, are there and just have no way out. They've created these programs that they can then go through and get the help that they need. And so, as a result, they've seen both trafficking and prostitution decrease.
So in the standing committee, is Canada now adopting that Nordic model?
Yeah, so as a result of that, Canada adopted a version of the Nordic model. And so we're in the first couple of years of that being enforced. And so it'll be really interesting to see in a few years.
So what does that mean?
Yeah, so it means that women in Canada or people who are selling their bodies in Canada will not be criminalized for prostitution, but the men who are buying them, the people who are purchasing them, can get a criminal record for that. And so that is now the model that we have here, and other countries are starting to adopt this as well, because legalization really has not been working in the places where it's been tried.
Jay, do you think this is going to work?
Yeah, so Sweden makes a pretty compelling case for the idea of decreasing demand for paid sex. If no one was paying for sex, no one is trafficked for sex. And we've simply met too many people who've been trafficked for sex. We met a girl who her first sexual experience was 12 years old in the back of a parking garage. And she's just broken. And she'll be broken for the rest of her life because of what men are doing. So with Red Light, Green Light, we did a 100-city live tour across Canada, testified in committee, and we're a small part of getting this law changed. We're hoping to now do a push in Australia and the UK because they're starting to have a conversation of, hey, we want to help people who are the most vulnerable citizens.
How do we get involved, and how does a parent, because someone's watching right now, and I'm horrified when I first hear about this, and having a daughter, there's just something that rises up in me that says, I'm called to action. And what's your hope?
Yeah, so I think our hope is to open up the conversation. I think kids are actually capable of tracking with conversations way more than we think, and way younger than we think too.
I was 10 years old when my dad taught me about sex. I had actually learned about sex when I was 9 years old from a kid. He explained it to me. I said, no, my parents have never done that. They're Christians. And he said, no, don't worry. There is another way you can make a baby. It's called the pill. Like the worst misinformation ever. So my dad took me to Toronto. We went to a Blue Jays game and we went for a walk down by the water on the boardwalk. And he's like, I'm going to tell you what sex is. I'm like, don't worry, Dad, the pill. I got this. But what he did was he explained sex in an age-appropriate way, and it opened up a door that we had ongoing conversations for the rest of my young adult to learn about the value of humans, the dignity of women. Parents, preventing human trafficking and pornography addiction starts at the kitchen table.
Right. And this is the issue, isn't it? Is that women are not being upheld in that beautiful state that God intended them to be. And it's diminishing everything with all of the content being a lot more violent sexually online and, in television shows. And you're covering a wide gamut. Yeah. So you also are going to be showing a film coming up, right, across Canada?
Yeah, so we made this film called Over 18, specifically on pornography and child addiction, and our plan was to do 30 screenings leading up to a vote in Parliament in December, and we're on track to do over 70 live screenings. So
it's fantastic.
Yeah, parents
How do people
get
and connected with that?
Over18doc.com.
Beautiful. We really appreciate you. We thank God for you. And we know that this is a time where we need to rise up more than ever before. If you have a desire to get involved, 1-855-759-0700. We are here for you as well. Until next time, Laura Lynn and I.
Yes, we'll see you again. Thank you for joining us. Have a good weekend.
God bless.